we went to my husband's annual cabin weekend with his college friends. Don't ask them, please, if it's the 17th or 18th consecutive year, or you'll be treated to a 30-minute breakdown of each trip. I'll save you the time and tell you that his friend Eric gets naked each and every year. Sorry, got naked, as this year was the inaugural Bring Your Kids to Cabin weekend. Whereas all of the other 16 or 17 prior trips took place in Minnesota or Wisconsin, this year we were heading to one of the guys' cabin in Low, Quebec. It's so cute to call something a cabin that is larger and nicer than any home I ever hoped to live in, and was featured in an architecture magazine. We drove instead of flying, as we wanted to pass the road trip tradition down to our kids. Plus, we were too broke to fly, and I would rather chew glass than get on a plane. Thank you. We stopped to visit friends of ours who live near the UP in Michigan, which was awesome, but added about 6 hours to the trip and brought us into Canada via Sault Ste. Marie. Interesting thing about Ontario, it's really, really big. And much of it is really, really lightly populated. We realized this as we were driving in a torrential downpour, low on gas, full on bladders, and starving. We played, let's see if the next town is any better, for a good 50 miles, before we realized that we weren't going to find anything larger than a Chicago city block. And my daughter was stuck in a "we hungry" loop. We finally pulled off the highway into a combination Esso gas station / Tim Hortons. I ran inside with my daughter while my husband pumped the gas with my son. I had been partially dreading this trip because of my daughter's abject fear of public bathrooms. She had only been potty trained for 3 months at this point, and while accidents were rare, she had steadfastly refused to pee anywhere other than our house since June, when a public restroom with 15 automatic flush toilets going off at once pushed her from apprehensive to, oh my God, these toilets are trying to swallow me whole. Anytime we were out of the house and we asked if she had to pee, she would politely, very politely say, "No, I'm fine." This worked if we were only going to be away from the house for a few hours, but I didn't think a 4-year-old's bladder could outlast a 5-day trip. A week before the trip, I had finally discovered a workaround. I would ask her if she needed to use the potty, and her polite but firm dismissal would come. Then I would say in my game show announcer voice, "We are not going to flush the potty." Hearing those 8 words seemed to work some sort of magic over her mind and bladder, because she was peeing in places I never thought she would. But would it extend to an Esso gas station in the middle of nowhere? Thankfully it did. She went, I went, we both washed our hands, and then I kicked her into the hallway in the back of the gas station so I could run back in and flush the potty. We were feeling pretty good about ourselves and discussing her upcoming chocolate milk reward when I saw my husband on the phone, pacing the chip and nut aisle. As I approached him, he pulled his phone away from his mouth and deflated my high with, "We can't pay for our gas." So I guess Canada is a different country than the United States. And when traveling to different countries, you're supposed to alert your bank so they don't freeze your accounts. Good to know. My husband was on the phone with someone at Chase trying to thaw our freeze. I figured it would take 3-5 minutes tops to iron it out, so I went with my son and daughter and picked out some chocolate milk for them to share and some candy, Mother of the Year. I brought them both up to the counter, and as the cashier was ringing up the purchases, I realized, of course, we couldn't pay. But I remembered I had a $5 in my wallet and asked if they took U.S. cash. The cashier's super polite face mask dropped for a split second as she eyed my money greedily and said, "Oh yeah, we take American." I figured it would be rude if I asked how much extra money I was paying in the exchange rate and handed the 5 over. 5 minutes turned into 10, 15, 30, 45 minutes. Roger finally gets off with Chase, who says it'll be another 10 minutes before our accounts are open back up. He goes out into the rain to move the minivan into a parking space. The cashiers didn't bat an eye at him walking out of the store. Even if Canadians weren't the nicest people on the continent, I'm sure they figure the odds of a man stranding his family at an Esso Tim Hortons were pretty slim, even for an American. At this point, I'm regretting everything. driving instead of flying, taking the longer route through Michigan, giving my kids the chocolate milk, because while my son's potty is still in his pants, I wasn't so sure my daughter would be able to brave a public restroom so soon after her last battle. But to their credit, they hung in there like champs. We went up the chip aisle laughing at the flavors, all dressed, ketchup, fries, and gravy. And I translated as much French as I could, made all the easier when the English counterpart was listed 2 inches, 5.08 centimeters, away on the bag. I'm kicking myself for not realizing we needed a contact chase and thereby ruining one of my kids' first road trips. When I remembered another road trip that ended with several hours at a gas station, my family had driven to Orlando for spring break when I was in high school and decided to get a jump start on the drive home, only to realize that every single hotel off the Georgia interstate was booked. In pure exhaustion, my mom pulled into a gas station around 2 a.m. and we all attempted to sleep for a few hours. My brother spent his time shifting and whining about his legs being cramped. To be fair, the back seat of a Ford Probe was deceptively tiny. A good chunk of self-recrimination fell off when I realized that my childhood road trips were probably filled with way more moments like this than I remembered, because the good parts stuck a lot easier than the bad. I'm sure my kids are too small to remember many details about this trip, and I'm guessing that this won't be one of them. Or maybe I'm hoping that it is, as my sister, brother, and I love reminiscing about the time my dad made 7 of us sleep in one tiny Bates Motel-ish room. Or the time my sister left her sweatpants in a motel in Kentucky at the start of a road trip and demanded that we stop by on the way home to retrieve them. Sweatpants. My son loves rocks. Every room in our house has at least one random rock that we've just had to bring home from places we go. So I was not surprised that as we're getting back into the rented minivan, filled up on gas, bladders questionable, stomach still hungry, bank accounts active, he pointed out a rah for us to grab. What I didn't expect was the rock he was pointing out would be the size and weight of a bowling ball. I tried to tell him we couldn't take a gas station 10-pound rock with us, that it wasn't polite, especially after how kind the people were to us. The rock is now on our back deck. I'm sure the SO staff saw me underhand shot put it into the back of the minivan, laughed, and spent the next hour sharing stories about their childhood road trips. Thank you.